Welcome to the Divorce to Dynamite podcast. I'm Michelle O'Neill. Today, I am so pleased to introduce to you my friend, Debbie Murray. She is an associate broker with Alibeth Allman and Associates, which is a very well-known real estate company here in the Dallas, Texas area. Debbie and I have been friends for a very long time. She was also my client. She is a woman after divorce, and she has a really good story. What I want you to learn from Debbie, though, are the points of wisdom that she has about how she went from getting a divorce to being uber success, not just successful, not just a little bit of success, but just being so successful, being a successful real estate agent in the Dallas market. And I think being one of the best of Dallas and all the, winning all the kinds of awards for her real estate career. So welcome to my show, Debbie. I'm so glad you agreed to be here and talk about the struggles that you went through and how you became successful. Because I think you have so much, I think there's so much that you have gone through that other women will identify with and that they can learn from you.
Great.
You sent me some notes before the show, and I love that. I'm really, I may not go directly in order though, because I love one of the things that you kind of said at the end, and I kind of want to start maybe at the end of what you said, because that to me was the most impactful thing that you told me, and I think that it will actually lead us into the discussion of the other things that you said.
Sure.
So how long ago was it that you got divorced?
2009.
Did you expect it, or was it a surprise?
There had been signs.
Yeah.
There had been signs.
You were really at a low moment. Can you talk just
I was at a low moment. When I got served divorce papers, I had been married 27 years, and it was coming off of my father's suicide. So I was at a very low moment. And so for those who have gone through a divorce or even experienced a suicide, you can only imagine. It was quite a bit of changes going on all at once.
A lot of loss.
And
a lot of grief that you were going through,
Absolutely.
Not just with your father, but then the loss of your marriage as well.
Yes.
And I know this. I mean, you also ended up relocating states as part of your divorce process.
That's right. I gave up my award-winning career here in Dallas to move out of state with his career, and then the divorce happened there. And then I came back to Dallas and basically had to start all over again.
Yeah.
Even though I'd been in real estate since '99, for 3 years I'd been gone. So it was like starting over.
Yeah. I mean, how hard is that?
It was difficult, but I survived it.
Yeah. I mean, you were going through, the grief of the loss of your dad, the grief of the loss of your marriage. Even if you saw the signs, I mean, it's still grief, right?
Absolutely.
And then, having to start over in your career. I mean, it's bound to have felt like you were down in a ditch and you were just having to fight every day just to struggle to get out of the ditch.
I did. I felt that way.
The thing that you said in your notes, in your email that you sent me before we started, was that when you're at your lowest, give back and focus on somebody else.
Right.
I love that you said that. So talk to me a little bit about how giving back helped you in the moments when you were at your lowest.
Well, one of the things that I did is I joined the board of directors of the Suicide Crisis Center here in Dallas and served as a board member for 6 years. And as difficult as it was that I'd lost my father, I was determined I was going to save the next life. To this day, it's still difficult to talk about. But my story has actually saved a life. And when I say give back, when you're low, sometimes you don't think there's anything left of you to give back. So I'm not necessarily speaking to volunteering and things like that.
Right.
You can be in a carpool with a neighborhood mom taking kids to lacrosse, and you can just stop one day when she drops her kids off and tell her how much you appreciate her and how she's helping you. And that's giving back.
Yes.
Just saying, how beautiful your hair looks to the girl checking you out at Target. Just giving back. If you do a little tiny bit of giving back, it helps you get you back.
I love that. And that's exactly why I wanted to start with that point that you made. I was taught that a long time ago. And I think it's something that is so easy to do every day that we miss. It's easy to miss. It's easy to just get caught up in what we're doing and kind of our own world and our own, maybe even our own grief, our own, our own whatever every day, and not kind of see the world outside of us. And I know for me, just for me, I'm at, I don't care where, Target, like you said, like you're at Target, you're having a bad day, whatever. You think your hair looks bad. You think your butt's gotten big, whatever. And, I mean, it's real, right? And somebody comes up to you and says, girl, look at those shoes, man. You're rocking those shoes. Yeah. And just the simplest little compliment can just lift your day up.
It can.
And it's so easy to do. It costs nothing. Like, like you said, I mean, when you say give back, it's not necessarily, volunteering. It's not necessarily making donations. We're about to come into like charity season, right? Wherever everybody we know is going to be saying, come to my charity event or give to my charity this or charity that, and that's really, like, that's a whole different animal. Not that we shouldn't be doing that too, but like, that's a whole different animal. I just think I loved that point that you made because it is so simple. We just don't even understand how simple.
And even if you're not involved in certain charitable events in Dallas, there are some amazing ones, and there are amazing women and men in these organizations. And one of the great thing about being a part of one is that even if you can't write a big check, they have events all year long. It gets you out of the house. It gets you laughing with people.
Yep.
But the other thing I want to say is I have a routine when I start my day, and that really helps me. I make my coffee and I sit down and I have about 5 or 10 minutes with me. And I read my daily devotional, which my favorite one is Our Daily Bread. And maybe you believe in God, maybe you believe in other things. Whatever makes you happy that you believe in, sit and have 5 or 10 minutes with yourself. And then I take out my business planner.
Yep.
And my business planner has my appointments and things that I have to do that day. And if you aren't in business, if you are a stay-at-home mom, pull out your calendar. But at the top of each day for my business planner, I write down, it started out where I was writing down 3 things I was grateful for. Now what I have found is I'm writing down like 7 or 8 things. I let the pen just keep writing. It might say God, it might say hope, it might say fashion, it might say friends, it might say my parents. I might name people specifically. I named you today. But it just is, it's a good positive thing to do every morning to get your mind in the right mindset. Now, having said that, just because we do positive things in the morning doesn't mean that we're going to end up having a positive day. But we need to set ourselves up for success.
Yeah. So, all right, so I'm going to get back onto your list of your wisdom points, and I love the sitting with yourself in the morning, because I think that kind of is the focus on you thing. And you talked about one of the things you talked about is the starting over. And you talked about, let's just start from your first point. I promised I'd get back onto your point. So you were kind of in this place where you did have to start over. And the point you made is that you have to take every opportunity to learn from what life gives you. And I love that point. That's one of the points I make, is that you can learn from everybody and everything that life gives you. I mean, God's not going to give you something that you're not supposed to learn from.
Right. Well, and what I learned, what I wish I'd known right after my divorce, when I did come back to Dallas and have to start over in real estate, is I wasted a lot of time.
Yeah.
And we don't have time to waste. We need to be focused on learning and getting better at things. For example, in the 80s, I was with Merrill Lynch and held my Series 7 and 63. So I've always been involved and interested in the stock market. But it was when the pandemic hit that we were all sheltered in place that I really started studying more about the stock market. And I already had stock investments, but I made money on a lot of stocks that, boomed during the pandemic. And I started opening my horizon, and I wish I'd done that sooner after the divorce. You need to be paying attention, listening to the noise, and learning what you can. And as far as business, when I came back, I knew what to do because I'd done it for years. But I think I just expected it all just to come right back.
Yeah.
Well, in the 3 years that I was gone, I had lost clients because they had sold their homes and they had moved out of state, and I wasn't here to sell their homes. And so I was having to start networking again and just building it all up again. And I was a little bit more lackadaisical about it than I should have been. And considering the economy in the world today, I just don't think that any of us have time to waste
Yep.
when we're seeking an opportunity.
Right. And we have to take our own opportunities to hone our skills and
Right.
and all of that. All right. So your second point then is that your life is not over. And I love that point because I think it's so easy to get down kind of in the dumps.
Right.
And to me, I think of it like a spiral. Like when you start spiraling down, what do they call it? I took this one physics class when I was in undergrad, and the one thing I learned about it was just the one basic law of physics was this thing in motion stays in motion, right?
Right.
And so when you're spiraling down, you just keep spiraling down until something causes it to stop.
Right.
And when you spiral up, the same thing happens, right? So like when you're in this place after divorce and it just seems like the world is spiraling out of control in a negative way.
Right.
Like what I want this podcast, and specifically why I wanted you on here, is maybe just this one message will help somebody stop spiraling down. So talk about that. Like your life is not over.
Your life is not over, and it's easy to be down on yourself because your heart may be broken, or you may have broken a heart, or you may have both walked away because you both wanted to and agreed to walk away. But either way, there is loss, and beating yourself up about it is the worst thing you can do. In fact, this is the time that you need to be the most positive with yourself. Surround yourself with family and friends and people who will support you. Now, remember this. If they haven't been through a divorce, if they haven't been through a suicide, they really don't understand. They think they understand, and they're trying to help and just give them grace because there's no way they can understand if they haven't been through it.
Right.
People who have been through it, though, you also have to be careful who you do get around you.
Yes.
Because you have to keep positive people in your life and you have to keep negative people out of it. And there are people who have been through divorces who have negative things to say, and that's just not what you need to hear right now. You need to hear you, and you need to be positive.
Absolutely, absolutely. And surround yourself with people that are going to be pushing you in the direction that you want to go. And I think that's so important because it is very easy to have girlfriends around you that tend to want to kind of keep you in the muck, and they have the best of intentions. I mean, we're not saying anybody has bad intentions, but in those intentions, it may be that they kind of keep wanting to rehash, how bad your ex was or whatever. And what's best for you, the rear view mirror is small for a reason, right? We don't want to keep looking backwards. We want to be looking in that gigantic front window and start moving forward. And so if you've got people in your life that are wanting to focus on that little bitty rear view mirror, maybe it's time to just distance, no need to draw bright lines or have conflict, just focus on the friends that are helping you move forward.
Right.
All right. Regain your power. I enjoyed what you were talking. So talk about the different types of abuse.
Well, I am a certified divorce real estate expert, and because of that organization, I was recently on a continuing legal education Zoom call where attorneys around the country, family lawyers around the country, were getting this content so that they could get legal education. And the topic was domestic abuse. And I've always thought that domestic abuse was physical violence. And to my surprise, I found out that domestic abuse is also power and control. A version of power and control is domestic abuse. And my ex had control of my phone number through our carrier. He had control of our credit cards. I was a authorized user on his account. I didn't have credit cards. Remember, we were married 27 years before he served me. I didn't have credit cards in my name, even our Vantage miles. Everything was through him. And when the divorce happened, I realized I needed to get credit cards in my own name. And while we still had his income, that was the opportunity to do it. But I had a very humiliating experience when I was standing in the grocery store checking out for $70 worth of groceries in this out-of-state city that I lived. And it was declined. And I went out to my car and I called the credit card company and they said, you're over your credit limit. Well, little did I know he had been lowering my credit limit, even though he was under stipulations not to do anything, like that to me. And that, when I saw this continuing legal education, I realized that was a form of power and control
Correct.
over me. So now that you are about to be single, make sure you get your credit cards in your name. Make sure you have your own Vantage Mile accounts. Make sure you get all of that set up so that when you're completely single and you don't have that other person's salary, you are set up. But then just know that you now have the power and control over your own life. And that's huge.
Right. I think that's so important, for women in a marriage, out of a marriage, after marriage. Statistics say that the rates of marriage are declining. Young people just aren't even bothering to get married. Right. And for women after divorce, especially women over 50, the likelihood that they will end up getting remarried
right.
is even smaller. I mean,
right.
I think the rate is like 22%
right.
of women who get divorced over 50
right.
end up finding another partner.
Right.
And so what that says is, like, ladies, we got to be self-sufficient here.
You got to plan on being alone.
We have to plan for ourselves and plan on how we're going to make it in this world without depending on a man to have our credit cards for us, abuse or not,
Right.
Power, control, all those things or not. Like, we got to live on our own 2 feet and right. So we've got to get some financial education. Like, we got to know how to do all those things for ourselves, so that we aren't in a place where men can have that kind of control over us,
right.
so that we aren't vulnerable to that type of power or control. And if you're in a situation where you find yourself in that type of power or control, you've got to find a way, to get your control back.
Well, Michelle, the mistake I made is I put all of my eggs in his basket.
That's right.
I put them in one basket, which was his. We met in college. Most of our friends were his college friends.
What year was it that y'all got married?
We got married in 81.
Okay.
And we met in college, and I was a fraternity, little sister to his fraternity, and I was also in my own sorority, but I mean, we were at the fraternity house more than we were at the sorority house. Are you listening, ladies? When my daughter went off to college, I told her, I said, and she met the man she's married to today, her sophomore year, and I said, you hang out with the sorority girls one night, and then you have date night with him one night on the weekend. Do not make my mistake. I literally put all of my eggs in one basket. Then his corporate job were his friends. All of our friends were his friends. He would say that to you today. He controlled all the finances, and I let him. So that was the mistake I made. And I realize if you're going through a divorce, it's a little late to get this advice now, but should you choose in the future to get back into a relationship, heed my warning.
Well,
don't ever put all
exactly.
your eggs in one basket. And I had a basket that I didn't even know I could fill.
Right. And but we're also raising our daughters.
Yes.
And we need to raise our daughters to do better and
Yeah.
to learn from our mistakes too.
Yeah.
So, but the point of my show and the reason that I kind of have gone on this mission is to help educate women who have been in those places.
Right.
I was one of my guests that I have had is a financial advisor. And I remember having a client who was an older woman who had been in a long-term marriage, whose husband had taken care of all the finances. And there was one day, and thankfully they had very, very sufficient resources. So she was taken care of in that way. But she had never written a check. Mm-hmm. Now, these days, we don't really have checks like we used to. But she didn't know how to use a credit card either, you understand? But we spent one afternoon in my office teaching her how to fill out a check.
Right.
And she had just very little idea of how to manage her money. And thankfully, I had a connection with a friend who I trusted
Right.
that I knew would help take care of her. But there's only so much he can do,
Right.
But it's why I've kind of gone on a mission of helping and to empower women after divorce. Right. This isn't the place for legal advice or any. This is girlfriend advice, right?
Right.
And that's why I love having women like you who've been there.
Well, you don't know what you don't know.
That's right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So, all right, mental health. So, this is where I think your journaling also helps, because taking your mental health seriously, I mean, yes, that kind of includes the counseling aspect, but I also think it includes kind of that focus on you aspect.
Right.
So, tell me about, how taking your mental health seriously has impacted you.
Well, like you said early on, it's easy just to spiral downward and just to let it get you down. And it does get you down, and you have down days. But you have to realize that you're responsible for bringing yourself back up. And it really, truly does rely on you. You said, surround yourself with positive people that care about you, people that will inspire you. However, the responsibility really does fall on your shoulders.
Yeah.
So what you need to discover, and what you will discover, is that you are much stronger than you really think you are. That's what I discovered. I really am much stronger than I ever knew I was. And after the divorce and after the suicide, I didn't even seek counseling. I did not have counseling for those two events in my life. And I know a lot of you are probably listening and going, I can't believe she didn't do that. You have to do what's comfortable for you.
Sure.
But I also knew that I needed my passion back. And so I went on a mission to get my passion back in 2013. And I went to a self-improvement boot camp. And that was actually when I stood up and told my story of the suicide and my father and my ex-husband serving me. And my story, a woman walked up to me and she said, 6 weeks ago, I tried to kill myself. And she said, I promise I will never try to kill myself again.
Yeah. I mean, and how impactful for you to know that you could make that difference for somebody else, and that your struggle was worth it for her. Absolutely. And I do think, I mean, counseling, is very worthwhile.
Absolutely.
For me personally, it's hard for me to open up like that to somebody else. And so, I think that there's also room for self-evaluation and that kind of like you do, the journaling. And so I think there's room for both. And there may be times where counseling is good and needed. And then there's also times where the journaling and the self-evaluation is good and needed, and times for both of those. And then the last point that you made, not in the order you made them though, because I started at the end of your story.
That's okay.
Is kind of your studying and career opportunities and your short-term and long-term planning. And like you, I also spend time. I don't always do it in the morning because sometimes I run late.
Sure.
Sometimes
I don't either.
Sometimes I don't have the time
7
in the morning.
Yeah.
But I always do it sometime during the day, either in the morning or at night. Sometimes if I have a break in the middle of the day, I'll take time maybe while eating my lunch to catch up. But I always take that time. I'll call it journaling, but it's not exactly journaling, to catch up on like my goal setting and what are the 3 things that I'm going to do today that are going to make little baby steps toward what those big goals are. So I love that you said that, like, don't waste time, like not setting your goals and achieving your goals and making those steps towards yourself.
I have a degree from the University of Texas, and the McCombs School of Business did a survey years ago with the alumni in the business school. And the question was, what is the number one thing you attribute to your success? And the answer was being a student of my industry. So since my divorce, I have received several designations. I got my Master Certified Negotiation Expert, Certified International Property Real Estate Expert, my Certified Divorce Real Estate Expert. I may be missing 1 or 2. I already had several before my divorce. But even if I'm not selling real estate, what I want you to know is there are things that I can do in my business to continue to study and for me to feel successful.
Yeah.
You don't have to sell a house today to feel successful.
Right.
You have to accomplish something today.
Sure.
And whether it's real estate or not, again, as I said, if you've not followed the stock market, there are some really good newsletters out there. Bloomberg, you can get on Twitter and follow Bloomberg. You can follow whoever you want to follow. If it's CNN, Fox News, whatever it is that floats your boat, follow them on Twitter. And it's free to follow them on Twitter.
Sure. And isn't that wonderful that we have so many resources?
We do.
And I read a statistic that women invest 30% less than men in retirement or investments, but yet we live longer. And, and so learning how to invest is so important for women. So I love that you're a proponent of that. All right. Well, that's all the time we have for today. I feel like we could talk forever, which we've been friends so long, I know that we could. So, all right. Well, thank you for joining me today, Debbie, and thank you for sharing your story. I hope that it has been impactful for you guys out there, and that you have had some nugget of wisdom that you can take and apply and use in your life today as women after divorce. Thank you for joining us on the Divorce to Dynamite podcast. Join us next time.